It is my pleasure to welcome the first Rawson we've ever had on Happy, Sad, Confused. We're breaking new ground here. Rawson Michael Thurber, thanks for the time today, man.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
So did you ever consider, now, is there another Rawson Thurber? What's with the three names? Like, are you?
The three names, my father's name is Marshall.
Okay.
And my name, my actual first name is Marshall, but I've always gone by Rawson. It's my great uncle on my father's side, which, as my mother likes to tell it, who's known as being one of the nicest men, the kindest men in the Northeast Kingdom. So it's a family name. And I got by Rawson Thurber a lot. And then when I became a super fancy director, I thought I might as well ride the horse in the direction it's going.
Yeah, just keep adding names.
Yeah, either sound like a director or like a Supreme Court justice. Just wanted to fit in at all the polo matches.
You got to use what you got. I was saying to you before when you hopped on, it's kind of surprising we haven't crossed paths. We have some mutual friends. I was literally just talking 2 days ago when your name came up with Ben Schwartz.
Oh, the greatest of all time.
And I would say, I've known Ben for many years through a mutual friend, and he's the best. Yes. Hopefully he's not listening to this. And I was saying, I think Rawson's going to be on the show, and he was like, "Oh, you're gonna love him. I think you guys just saw a movie together." So he's like, just good to geek out with.
Oh, he's the greatest.
So yeah, go ahead.
Ben and I, we've known each other for a long, long time. He actually went to Union College, which is where I went to school in upstate New York, a tiny school in Schenectady, New York. We went at different times. I graduated in the 1900s, and he graduated after that. He and I have been trying to work together forever. I made a TV show called Ryan Hansen Solves Crimes on television. It was 2 seasons on YouTube, and I'm very, very proud of the show. And I convinced, tricked, probably is a better way of saying it, Ben into doing a cameo in the show with Ryan, and he just came in and nailed it. Yeah. And we've been friends ever since. And actually, while I was making my last movie, Red Notice, Ben and I started to send each other Marco Polos. And I don't do that with anybody else. It's just Ben and myself. Like, I don't have like a group of people. It's just me and Ben. And it was a really fun sort of video diary of the experience of making the movie. And he and I were cooking up something else. We have this idea. He's got this great idea for a half-hour show, and we'll see if we can convince somebody to let us go make it.
So we'll get to Red Notice in a second, but let's start like in terms of, it's the trajectory of your career. Like most directors, knowing follows a linear, normal path. But obviously, Dodgeball is the film that started it all for you. When you were when that film came, did you have an eye on the kind of movies you're making now? I mean, you're in this very rarefied, interesting, giant budget, star vehicle, original properties.
Yeah,
I know you love like 80s, 90s stuff, but like, was this even in your head, like where?
No, I don't think when I was first starting out, I guess I was just trying to make a movie that I wanted to see. That's, as simple as that sounds, with Dodgeball. And I wrote something that I thought that made me laugh. I've always been a sports fan and kind of a comedy geek, and just sort of wanted to put those two things together. And that was basically Dodgeball. It was my love letter to Revenge the Nerds and Hoosiers, more or less, and Island of Misfit Toys, sort of scrappy underdog story. And when you're first starting out, like you're mostly just trying to not get fired, which is mostly what I was doing. But I'd written the script, and I knew why it worked and how it worked. But no, I never really thought about where I was going after that. But I've always loved sort of big crowd pleasing entertainment pieces. As you mentioned, I grew up on 80s and 90s cinema. Or movies is probably a better way of saying it. And I'm born in San Francisco, raised in Northern California, and so the Spielberg Lucas world is kind of that's my world. I'm not alone in that, and so I've always liked that kind of storytelling. And that's kind of what's guided me. I think you can't, if you're writing, especially writing and directing, I don't think you can try to be something that you're not.
Right.
And it took me a little while to kind of accept that, and accept that that the stuff that I like to make is sort of crowd pleasing entertainment, and the Red Notice is certainly unabashedly that, as we can talk about some other time.
Well, no, it's interesting too. I mean, you do several aspects of your career and the kind of movies you're making set you apart from the pack. Like, you write a lot of your own stuff, which is not a lot of the blockbuster directors don't necessarily get that writing credit. So that speaks volumes, and I'm sure it's something you take a lot of pride in. And as much as these films are inspired by films of your youth, they're original IP, which I mean, these are, again, two things that maybe you don't get enough credit for, but like, to look at the stuff that you've been doing with Dwayne in the last few years, that is unusual. Talk to me a little bit about how important those two aspects are to you, to the kind of work you're doing now.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for even asking that question. Thank you for even noticing that. When you talk about original ideas with budgets of, over $100 million, written by one person and directed by that same person, the list of people who do that is very, very, very small. I very, very small. Like, I'm not sure there are 3 people on that list.
No, true.
I'm not kidding. Like, I think that's it. So,
and most of them are like eight writers on generally any blockbuster.
For sure. But so, like, if you look at if you look at like writer director at that with original IP over $100 million, it's sincerely, I think it's like 3 or 5. So, at least I'm in the top 5 on the list. But yeah, it's I've always I take the writing very seriously. It's something that I could always write from a pretty young age, and I guess I never really separated the two. It never occurred to me to write a story and hand it to somebody else, or to take somebody else's story and try to direct it. I think I would be lost. I think I wouldn't know where to put the camera if you handed me a script that I didn't write. And so the process for me, and I'm not alone in this for writer directors, I start directing from fade in, from that first line, and I'm learning what the movie is, what the story is, what the tone is, as I'm writing those scenes and sequences and pages and scripts. And so by the time I'm shooting it, I've directed it in my head so many times that it's oftentimes it's about trying to communicate that as best you can to the people who are helping you, and trying to capture that. And sometimes you can't get it, and sometimes you do, and oftentimes it becomes this other thing once you bring in actors who have a different perspective or bring something you hadn't thought of. And it can be really fun. It can also be really challenging, because sometimes you're like, this is not anything like I thought it would be, and it can be very frustrating. And oftentimes it's better than what you thought, if you're a little patient with it.
The last 3 films have been collaborations with Dwayne Johnson, the biggest movie star human being on the planet physically.
By weight,
by every
volume,
measurement.
By volume. Yeah, exactly.
He's another one I've had the great pleasure of knowing over many years. I feel like I have the distinction of having the one project with Dwayne that never got off the ground. He was producing a talk show for me.
Oh no, what happened? What'd you do wrong, Josh? What'd you do wrong?
I know. How do I drive a Dwayne Johnson project into the ground? It's a longer story. No, but he's the best.
No.
He's the best. Yeah. I love him. And I know what he demands of others. And I know, hardest workers in the room, never giving up, turning over an idea in every way possible, demanding excellence. Talk to me about, is that something, how did you guys click in the first place? Did it happen very quickly on Central Intelligence, or what happened?
Yeah, it was. I mean, you could ask him, but my what he thinks, because he's probably that fucking guy. But no, but we became fast friends, really, from Central Intelligence. It was not, Central Intelligence was not originally written for Dwayne or anybody like Dwayne. I mean, The original script was written by Ike Barinholtz and David Stassen, who are incredibly talented, funny guys. And it was, I think, their first spec that they wrote. It was a great script. And but the original joke was that it was about this guy who was sort of a loser in high school, and then came back to the reunion and was actually, a CIA spy or assassin, and he was sort of, heavyset dude, right? So it was sort of fat Jason Bourne was the joke, right? Like you would never expect this guy to be great, and that was a good joke and all that. But when I think Dwayne saw my movie before that, he saw a movie I made called We're the Millers, and he thought it was super funny, and he wanted to do action comedy, and he liked this idea. And then for me, when I thought, oh my God, this is so much better, right? Like the idea that a kid who was picked on and bullied in high school, would transform himself into the Rock, right? Into this physical armor. But so he looks totally different, but on the inside, he has the same insecurities he always had. And it was just such a better way in. And so it started from there, but as it relates to Dwayne, the thing that I love most about him is that, and this from working with him, is that he takes the work very seriously. But he doesn't take himself seriously. And so he's the first guy to laugh at himself. He's the first guy to make fun of himself. And that just opens it up for everybody else. So 3 movies in a row. It's been fun every single time. And it's been great to kind of expand the palette every single time. And it's been a pleasure. I think I'm all set though. I think I'm all done with Dwayne. I think he's done with me. We're never going to work together.
Well, he's going to be emperor of the known universe soon, so he's not going to have time to make. He's skipping president and just becoming the grand. Yeah.
No. I mean, I'll look. I'd wash that guy's car if he asked me to. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
So I'm glad you say all of them have been fun productions, because Red Notice, which is this just like glorious kind of like star vehicle. And I'm a sucker for just movie stars being movie stars, right?
Sure.
And it's and especially nowadays where we keep talking about oh, it's not about movie stars anymore. It's about, and the concepts are great. And this is a great concept, Don't get me wrong. But there's something about seeing 3 ginormous movie stars share a screen. You've got Ryan Reynolds, you've got Gal Gadot, and Dwayne. But you're making this in some very interesting circumstances. And this is obviously not a new conversation. A lot of folks had to deal with this. But you're making this global spectacle in the middle of the hell year.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how malleable you have. How did you, in a nutshell, in 3 hours, how did you make this movie in these circumstances?
Josh, thanks. Another smart question. No shock there. It was really, really hard. So I'd like to slightly modify my previous statement about all 3 being fun. This last one was incredibly hard for everybody. And about halfway through shooting, almost smack dab in the middle of our principal photography, that's when the pandemic hit, and we shut down for 6 months. We were about 2 weeks away from heading to Italy to shoot a car chase. We scouted it, we'd pre-visited it, we'd had we were ready to shoot a big sort of fun car chase that kicks off the movie. And the plug got pulled, we couldn't go anywhere. And so we retrenched and rethought, and then when we came back, we ended up not leaving Atlanta. We shot this entire movie on stage or on the back lot at Atlanta Metro Studios, except for I think 3 days after a Splinter unit that I went to Rome to get a couple shots that I just couldn't live without. Right. It was just a skeleton crew there, but it was incredibly challenging. And then when we came back, we were in an NBA bubble. We were quarantined, and so for me, and then so all the crew was staying at one of 2 hotels, but I had to stay in a separate space. Because as the director, if I were to be in contact with somebody who tested positive, I would have to be pulled from the set, and we couldn't risk that. So I was essentially in self-isolation for 90 days away from my wife and 3 beautiful children.
Oh my God.
In Atlanta. I would get up and drive myself to set Monday through Saturday. We shot 6-day weeks, drive home, by myself, be at home, get up and go back again. and no physical contact. It was, and at the same time, there was an election that was happening, the 2020 election, which was, as you know, really intense. So no physical contact, isolation, the fate of the free world at stake in the 2020 election.
Your biggest film ever.
Yep. My biggest film ever, 3 giant movie stars, $100+ million film that I thought up in my own brain pan, and yeah, it was the closest. Like I'm not somebody who struggles with or suffers from anxiety. Thank goodness. Just never had that challenge. But this was as close as I've ever gotten. It was really tough, really, really tough.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't be human if you didn't feel any of that. It's amazing, given everything you described, that the film turned out how it did, and it's not evident on the screen that you shot this in the way you did it.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Can we backtrack a little bit just in terms of how this one came to be? Because I remember This is one of those properties that, like, again, original concept, clearly inspired, I would guess, from, I don't know, Thomas Crown Affair or Ocean's movies, all these kinds of different things, right? Do you go out and do you go on the road with Dwayne and pitch this to all the studios? And how does that go? I mean, my sense is this was the hot property for when you put it out on the market, right?
It was. So we were shooting Skyscraper, which was my movie before this one, which was an idea that I came up with that I pitched Dwayne while we were in post on Central Intelligence. And then while we were prepping Skyscraper, I started noodling with this idea for Red Notice. And part of that, I think, is any sort of writer director will tell you, you're always tinkering with something. And it's usually because the thing that you're working on, all you're dealing with are problems on the thing that you're trying to make. And the one that you're kind of messing around, it doesn't have any problems yet. So it's always more interesting, the one that you just can't quite leave it alone. So I was working on this idea for Red Notice. And then I talked to Beau Flynn, our producer, both of Skyscraper and Red Notice. And I said, I think I've got this idea. And I sort of half pitched him. And he's like, that's great. I'm in. Let's go. When do we tell Dwayne? And I'm like, no, I don't have it yet. We're still making. Don't have. And he's like, well, let's tell him tomorrow. I'm like, it's not ready. And so eventually, in the fall, I think of 2017, I want to say, I went out with Dwayne and pitched him. We went out to dinner, and I pitched him the idea for Red Notice. And we were at this fancy steakhouse, and my steak is ice cold because I'm pitching him a little hard out, and Dwayne's eating a steak. And then I get to a certain part in the movie, in the pitch, and he breaks into a smile, and he stands up, he throws his napkin down, and he goes, I'm in. And then I just got really drunk after that. But
that's a good moment. That's a nice moment.
It's a great moment. So then we went and pitched it in February of 2018. So I was in post on Skyscraper, went and took it around town. And so what happens is I go to all the buyers with Beau Flynn, my producing partner, on the movie. He's got his company, and I've got mine, and we went out and we go to all the buyers, and I basically give an hour pitch, 45-minute pitch, which is a one-man show more or less. And so then we went around, and we think we pitched at 10 places, and then we had 10 offers. We had 10. It was just Dwayne attached. The gal was not attached, although I would speak about her in my pitch. And I would speak about Ryan in my pitch. Those are the people that I wanted.
Had them in mind.
I've got a little book somewhere, with their names written in it. I'll show you one of these days. But anyway, so I pitched it, and then it became a bit of a knife fight for the idea. And we ended up selling it in a competitive situation. And it's my understanding that we set the record for the highest pitch sale in the history of Hollywood, I think.
Amazing. So
pretty cool.
More than cool. Give me some context, because we alluded to the beginning of the career. Dodgeball is a hell of a start, right? It becomes pretty, as I recall, maybe you have different memories, kind of an instant cult classic, an instantly kind of quotable film, which maybe you appreciate even more as the years go by.
I do.
And then you follow it with a film, Mysteries of Pittsburgh, which has to be a blow. It doesn't turn out the way, right?
No, brutal.
Like, were you in that like fabled director jail after that? Like, what
Yeah.
happened in that period?
Yeah, that was so hard. So I finished dodgeball, and I wanted to do something totally different. And I think, and this goes back to me earlier saying, you just need to. I've learned to be okay with the things that I love, and that I'm good at. And so I love this little book called The Mysteries of Pittsburgh, which is Michael Chabon's first novel. Michael Chabon, Pulitzer Prize winner, the coolest, by the way, if you ever get a chance to talk to him. And so I, convinced Michael to option the novel to me, and I adapted it on spec, and we went and made it. It's a little $6.5 million movie, and the movie, I didn't do a good enough job. The movie is not good enough, and that's on me. And it was gutting. I poured my heart and soul into it, and we took it to Sundance, and I mean, there's nothing more painful than to work as hard as you work on these things, and to have the movie not work, and to have the audience just kind of go meh, like that.
When did you know? Do you know like before it even screens, or did you know like that premiere at Sundance, or like
no?
I mean, I think biggest
no. I mean, you learn so much from your disappointments or misses, right? I think that I think I was worried pretty early especially once we got into the edit, and I was like, oh gosh, I didn't do this right. I was not good enough. I was not a good enough director. I think the script that I wrote was good enough, but I don't think I directed it well enough. Mm-hmm. And that was really hard for me. And then, but you hold out hope, right? You hold out hope that, maybe it's not quite as ungood or bad as you fear. And so you take it, you maybe the audience will see it and see what I was going for, and they'll give me, and it didn't work that way. Although there was this one moment at Sundance after we, premiered at Eccles, 1,500 people. Sundance is a giant theater, right? And I was pretty sunk at that point, and I was walking out, and there was this one, like a ticket taker or something, and she said, "Hey, are you Rawson Thurber?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "You did the Mysteries of Pittsburgh?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I loved your movie," and I was just like, "Oh my God, thank you." I just wanted to hug this person. I wish I knew her name, because you're just so devastated. So that was really hard, and then really, really hard. And then at the same time, it was about 2008. The writer's strike in town happened, and so everything shut down. But right before it shut down, I took, I think, 4 writing jobs, like stacked together to try to keep the lights on.
Yep.
And so the strike ended, and then I spent the next 18 months writing out of that hole, of just writing, and I'm just writing for hire, not writing for me. And so then it's 2011, basically end of 2010, and then when you look at my career at that point, I had a film that came out in 2004 and nothing really, because Mysteries doesn't work, and was on 4 screens, and it's 2010 and a half, and you're ice cold, right? But back to director jail, the good news about being a writer director is that you don't really end up in director jail, because you can write your own get out of jail card, right? Director jail happens when you are a director who needs a script, and you need somebody to hire you to direct a script. And because I'm able to write my own ticket, I'm never really in danger of that. I suppose if I am unable to write a screenplay, I'd be in trouble, or I could be. So anyways, that was that. And then New Line called me up, and they said, "Look, we've got this thing called We're the Millers that we want to make." And I read the script, and I thought the premise was really good, and a lot of the jokes were really funny, and I kind of knew what I wanted to do with it, and I really, really needed to make a movie. And so I said, "Look, this tone, this sort of R-rated tone is not really my thing, but I am going to fashion a lethally effective comedy widget out of this. And that's what I did to get back in the game.
And you cast the hell out of it. I mean, with some known quantities, but also, I mean, that's, I think, when most of us discovered the genius that is Will Poulter, who's going to now be like a giant, enormous Marvel superhero. So excited for everything he does.
He's the
and
greatest,
sweetest, humblest.
Oh my God, the best. And he, because I knew him from Son of Rambo, but he was like 10 when he did it, and he came in and he was like, sprouted. He was like 6'4" when he walked in the door, but I didn't know that he was British. Like he came in and he had a perfect American accent. And then we ended the audition. He's like, "All right, thanks." And I was like, "Oh my God, what? Like you're British?" And he's like, yeah. And boy, was he was just the greatest. He's such a sweetheart, and just stole that whole movie.
There's one piece of IMDb trivia that stuck out for me that I'd love some clarification on.
Sure.
Was Adam Driver cast as Scotty P in that film?
No. Adam Driver, by the way, he put himself on tape for Scotty P, and he was amazing. And I was like, well, we have to cast this guy. I mean, you've seen him on set. I mean, you've seen, he's Adam Driver, bow down. But he's so funny on Saturday Night Live.
Oh my God, yeah.
He's obviously an incredibly talented, serious dude, but he's also very, 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 very funny. And his read for Scotty P was just fantastic. And I'm like, well, yeah, we're casting that guy. And then the dates couldn't work with girls. I think, like, we couldn't get him. And then the Sean Anders and John Morris, the original writers, who are super talented dudes, they're like, you should look at this guy, Mark Young. He's really, really interesting. And then I was like, as soon as I saw Mark's read, I was like, oh, well, that's a great choice. And he was fantastic.
It worked out fantastic, but I do want to live in the alternate universe where.
Right? Could you imagine, Josh? Could you imagine what a strange?
Do you still have the tape? You can monetize this, Ross.
I would never. I could never. I'm sure I could find it, but I just would never do it.
No, yeah, you don't want Kylo Ren coming after you.
No, sir.
It is kind of shocking, given your resume and your sensibilities, given the world we live in, that we haven't seen the Rawson Michael Thurber comic book movie. Just being realistic, it's just what we all talk about and what's being made. And I know there was talk of Ant-Man, and if you believe the reports, that you might have even turned down Ant-Man after Edgar Wright left it. Can you clarify what went down?
Yeah. That's gosh, it's so funny how these things happen. I never turned it down, and they never officially offered it to me. I think the way these things work is, everybody knows what everybody's answer is going to be before anything is officially said. So there's never a version where there's no version of Kevin Feige offering a movie to somebody and not already knowing what the answer is going to be. It just doesn't work.
Same with the casting. Like, they go in and they sign. They're like, I'm going to do 5 movies, whether if I get this part or not.
Exactly. So I had conversations about Ant-Man, I think I'm a big fan of the Marvel stuff. I haven't been able to keep up on all of it just because I've been making this movie. But I love what they're doing. There is one particular combination in the Marvel universe that I would push a small child off of a bridge to get a chance at.
Wait, is this you mentioned it was with Hulk and Wolverine? Was that the combo?
Yes, that's exactly right. How do you know that? When did I ever mention that before?
You mentioned it. I do my research. A little Googlage goes a long way.
This is getting spooky. Yeah, I thought the Hulk Wolverine Lindelof run was Ultimate was pretty fantastic.
So you must have put a feeler out, even just to say, no. You're ready when they're ready, basically, is what you're telling me. They
can tweet me. No,
that's how these things happen. Yeah,
exactly. If they're interested in doing that, they have my number.
What is, just to geek out for a second, what is intriguing about that combo? Like, what's the?
Oh, well, I mean, obviously, I don't know how deep you want to go, but like anybody who knows those characters knows that Wolverine was introduced in Hulk. They're inextricably linked, right? So you have this unstoppable force and immovable object, and I think that in and of itself is really fascinating. That they both suffer from the same curse, essentially, right, and they handle it in totally different ways. And I think that is that in and of itself is incredibly juicy, and and on from there. But certainly, I thought Lindelof had some really, really kind of clever touches to that old Saw. If you have a chance to read it, you should.
Have you daydreamed you were casting for Wolverine? Obviously, Hughes.
Yeah, he sort of set the bar. I have not let myself do that, and I think, I mean, there's certainly every once in a while you go, oh, that's, but I try not to, just because I don't know, you end up disappointed, typically. But no, I've not yet. But I'll let you know, Josh. If my phone rings, I'll send you a text.
Please do. I asked you for a comfort movie. I've been reveling in comfort movies ever since the world ended in 2020, and we're all hanging by a thread. We need comfort in our lives. You chose a great one. I haven't seen it in a number of years. Maybe the first sports movie on the list. Tell us your comfort movie and why you selected it, Rawson.
Well, I picked Bull Durham, written and directed by Ron Shelton. That was his first film. It is my all-time favorite movie. I'm not saying it's the best movie all time. I think there are some others that would have a claim to that, but it's my personal favorite film. And I guess to me, back to what I was saying about dodgeball, I've always loved sports, and I've always loved sports movies. And I think that Bull Durham blends comedy and heart and romance in such a wonderful way. It's got so much depth. It's got great characters, life lessons. I think Kevin Costner has never been better than he's been as Crash Davis. Susan Sarandon, never more beautiful. Tim Robbins as Ebby Calvin, Luke Lelouch, just absolutely delivering a free and silly performance. And I think, I guess to me, like, I don't know, I guess I just always identified with Crash Davis more than Ebby Calvin, of just like, someone who has all the, all the world weary wisdom, and maybe not as much talent as the next guy, but he works hard, and I guess I identify with that.
Do you remember when you first saw it? Because I mean, we're roughly the same age, and I remember it being, it's kind of like an adult sexy movie for like our age. I was like 12 or 13. You probably were about the same when you saw it. Yeah.
It's so funny you bring that up. So for me, it was the first R-rated movie, second R-rated movie that I saw in the theater, and it was a big deal. And I had to talk to my mom, and I had to, and she said, look, now there's some real stuff, are you ready? And I'm like, yeah. And I went. And so there was a little bit of that, just sort of personal life nostalgia attached to the movie, but it was a really special moment for me. And in my family growing up, movies had a real importance and significance. And we would, some of my earliest memories, like I remember being in the lobby in this, one screen movie theater in Avon, North Carolina, when during the summer when my mom took me to see Raiders of the Lost Ark, and she said, "Now look, this movie is incredibly exciting, and you're not going to want to go to the bathroom, so you better go to the bathroom now." And I was like, "Oh, my eyes are big as saucers." And the point of the story is I peed. I went and peed, and then I went into the movie, but these movies were really important. And whenever we would finish, finish watching the movie, we'd be driving home. My mom would always ask me, like, what were your favorite moments or scenes? And I think from an early age, I started to think of movies as moments or scenes. And once you start thinking of them that way, then and that they're ordered, right? That somebody had to create that order or create those scenes, and then you start to think about, oh, somebody wrote that, So anyways, back to Bull Durham. That's why. And when I went to USC for film school, we had to write. We had to there's a special project where we had to add a film to the sort of USC canon, right? Like you had to pick something that mattered to you, go interview somebody who worked on it, and you put that report in this big kind of, a repository of information. And I picked Bull Durham, and I wrote a letter to Ron Shelton, who was prepping Play It to the Bone. And I wrote a letter to him, and he was in prep, and I quoted the movie and all kinds of stuff. And it was embarrassing at this point, but anyways, Ron responded, and he invited me to interview him for half hour. And so I went to his production office. I interviewed him. I asked a bunch of dumb questions, and he invited me to set. And actually, Play It to the Bone was the first film set I'd ever stepped foot on. Big. It's all.
Yeah,
important.
no, and he has such a distinctive voice, an authentic voice as a filmmaker. For those that don't know, like he spent time in the minors, inspired in part from his own experiences.
Yeah.
And it has such a unique kind of human tone to the whole thing. Like, and you talk about a collection of moments. Is there a scene that jumps out as the one that really sticks with you? That's your favorite scene in the film?
Oh yeah, yes, of course. Well, I mean, everybody talks about the bus ride where where Crash teaches Ebby his cliches. Good Lord willing, things will work out. You got to plan one game at a time and all that. And I mean, it's a treasure trove. But I would say there's basically two scenes in Bull Durham for me that really mean the world to me. And the first is when Crash Davis. He misses the tag at home plate, and the umpire tells him that the runner was safe, when in fact Crash believes he tagged him out, and Crash Davis ends up calling the umpire a word you can't call him, and gets thrown out of the game. But I thought that entire sequence in performance and writing was so beautiful and so free and so vibrant and so funny. That I can't help but smile every time. But the one that really sticks with me is when Ebby Calvin gets called up to the majors, and he goes to find Crash Davis in Sandy Grimes's a pool hall in his bar to tell him I got called up, and Crash has had a little too much to drink, and he's a little bit bitter about it, and he tells Ebby Calvin that your arm's worth $1 million, and all my limbs put together aren't worth 7 cents a pound. And that moment of Crash seeing that he was never going to make it. He had 21 days in the majors once, but it didn't matter how much he loved it. It didn't matter how smart he was. It didn't matter how hard he worked. He just didn't. His right arm was not a thunderbolt, and to see him have to accept that was I just always find it really powerful and beautifully performed by both people, by everybody.
Exactly. It's a great marriage: performance, direction,
writing,
writing, etc. Yeah, it's all there. Good, great pick. And
you.
You said, and they're all like at the height of their powers. Like, it's like Costner's great, Sarandon's the best.
How good is Costner?
So good. I mean, and you also believe him as an athlete. He's a great
swing.
He's played an athlete so many times. Yeah,
I know. He can throw the ball, he can swing a bat. That's great.
So I know always cruel to look forward, especially as you just probably put the finishing touches on your ginormous movie. But there's a lot of intrigue and excitement about The Division, which has been around for a while. People have been talking about adapting this for a while. Mm-hmm. You're the man for the job now, and you got two, correct me if I'm wrong, you still have Jake Gyllenhaal and Jessica Chastain, two of the best in the business attached?
Yeah, unless you know something I don't know.
No.
Yes. I was talking to Jake about an hour ago, and he didn't tell me anything. So,
okay.
No, Jake and Jessica, and we're developing the script. It's in really good shape. We're plugging away. We're hoping to start shooting next year. And it's the movie I want to make. It's the movie I want to make next. I love the game deeply. I play with three buddies of mine. We play every Tuesday night, like a bowling league. And so I really enjoy the game. And I think what I love most about The Division is that it's, do you know the game at all? Have you played it at all?
I don't actually know. I mean, I did some research on reading about it.
It's really, okay, so it asks. I think at its core, the game and the hopefully the movie that we make asks a very, very simple question, which is, what do we owe each other in a society? What does one person owe to another in a society? And when the chips are down, how do you choose to live your life? Are you a selfish person or are you a selfless person? And I think those questions are key to how the division works. And I'm hopeful that we're going to make an incredibly entertaining, sort of inspiring, uplifting, fuck yeah version of the movie. And
clearly more resonant than ever, given what I know about the premise of the film. Like it takes on some really interesting.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. The pandemic part of it is really interesting, right? Because the division is based, the inciting incident, as they say, is a really lethal pandemic that causes a lot of trouble. And I'm hopeful that that the movie itself is not going to focus necessarily on the pandemic, because the game doesn't. It's all post-pandemic. It's all aftermath. It's okay. So now what? Right. And now we have it's a mid-crisis movie essentially. Right. So it's not post-apocalyptic, but there's an opportunity. You have these division agents, and their job is to save what remains. Their job is to rescue society from the brink. And it's up to us whether or not that's going to happen. And that's super exciting, I think.
Well, you've got two of the best in the business again with Jay and
they're so good.
So good.
They're so good.
Is there, speaking of great actors, I mean, you've been spoiled. You've had an embarrassment of riches in Red Notice alone, three of the biggest stars on the planet. Jake and Chastain coming up. Like, is there an actor that you're dying to utilize in the film?
Yeah. I mean, I have one bucket list actor that I've always wanted to work with, and that's Tom Cruise. I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan my whole life, and I haven't been able to quite figure out what that thing would be just yet, but that would be number one for me.
Macquarie's hogging all the Mission Impossible.
He's super talented. I know. Chris,
rotate every one. What happened to that?
Somebody else a chance. I know. Well, Macquarie, that guy is about as good as they come. So I understand why Tom's hitched his wagon to Chris. Yeah, smart guy.
That makes sense as a collaboration. That's, if I was going to guess one, that totally. Oh no, I'm saying for you. I mean that would be awesome. That would be very cool.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I'd jump at the chance.
Congratulations, man. Ben said it right. He said I would enjoy geeking out with you. You're so easy to talk to. We obviously share a lot of the same sensibilities, and I'm so thrilled you were able to execute this film as well as you did, given the circumstances. It's insane. I know it's getting people are going to be able to see it on the big screen as well as Netflix too, which must mean a lot to you.
Yeah, I was very, very happy when Netflix said they were going to put it in theaters for the week before it came onto the platform. So it comes out in select sort of Cinemark, I think, theaters on November 5th. Nice. And then it comes onto the Netflix platform proper on November 12th. I'm really proud of the movie. It's the best movie I've ever made, and I hope people like it.
I'm sure they will, man. Congrats on everything. And
Thank you.
Yeah, here's to many more conversations, hopefully.
I hope so, man. It was a real pleasure, Josh. And I have to say, you do your research, and it's really, really a joy to talk to somebody who actually puts the work in. So thank you.
Thanks, buddy.